Hello, everyone. This
Hey,
is your Soul Saturday.
we're back,
We're back,
and
Soul Sessions.
yeah, we hope you guys are doing okay and staying positive
hmm
and staying active.
And we hope you are all registered for our spiritual course, the 7 Spiritual Principles for the Awakening Soul. If you haven't registered yet, there's links in this feed for you to register. It's absolutely free. It's a 7-part program. We already had 2 classes.
Mm.
The next live one is on Monday, so we hope to see you there. And then also there's visualizations in that as well. So
Yes, some great visualizations.
yes, Rob did one actually. That was wonderful. I love it. The Book of Life. A lot of people are saying how what impact that's had on them.
Yeah, I thought I'd chime in, do something a little bit different.
hmm And we also have a new one I added that wasn't advertised. It's Mind Body Health. So those of you who want to stay healthy, or if you're feeling a little throat stuff, just pop that audio in and listen to it, and it'll help work with your mind to bring your mind back into balance. And people are saying, Happy Saturday. I love the Book of Life. Yes. The first time I listened to the Book of Life meditation, when you played it for me,
Mm.
I felt my whole body vibrate. It was just amazing how much energy was in that beautiful, beautiful piece you did. So you have magic, Rob.
No, you.
You. Okay. So today's topic is our favorite topic,
Yeah,
love and the courageous heart.
yes. So we're going to be kind of addressing a few questions that are inherent in the kind of work that we do as
Mhm.
coaches. One of them is definitely what is love, because it's hard to define. I mean, one of the reasons psychology never really developed a good theory of love is because it's so difficult to define.
Mhm.
Um, the other question is, why do people, all of us, why do we play out these patterns?
Mhm.
Right? We've all noticed that there's a pattern somehow that's related to the way we approach relationships.
Mhm.
And then thirdly, what is a courageous heart? Like, what
What
does
does
it
that
mean?
mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? And how do we do it? How do we get there? And of
Mhm.
course, we're going to be talking about more of a conversation. We didn't want to necessarily teach, but more have a candid conversation between two coaches
Candid.
who, well,
I'm just kidding. It's just
oh,
like we're gonna reveal it all. We're gonna tell you the truth.
right, right. Because often when we're teaching, right, we're it's about the content,
Mhm.
but here we wanted to kind of give you uh, kind of the back, what do they call it? The backstage of
Yeah.
how we think about things and how
Mhm.
we approach these questions.
So let's start with what is love? I think the first person that we learn that from is our mother. And whether we have a good relationship or not, but that's kind of this concept of a human love is through the mother, and the mother is provides us everything, some warmth, comfort,
Mm.
food, changes our diaper when we need it. So that one person that was there in the beginning really forms our conception of love, but it's an ego conception. It's not like a true love. I mean, there is love there. The mother loves her children, but it's really starts that conditional process of where you feel loved when she's around, and if she leaves, you're not loved, and then you start to identify with the response from the external as to how lovable you are. And so when we define love, we think it's about us, like how good we feel about ourselves, really, but we tend to define it by how other people treat us. So if that person calls us, they love
Mm.
us. If that person wants to commit to us, they must love us. And if they love us, there's some kind of comfort and security with that. So we end up confusing what real love is through what we learned early in life. But what do you think your conception of love is when you like? when you first started dating and
Yeah.
experiencing love for yourself?
Yeah, Freud himself, in developing his theories about the unconscious mind and how the psyche works, he said, "Everywhere I go," meaning in his exploration of the theme of the human mind and the unconscious and love, he says, "Everywhere I go, the poets have been there before,"
Mm,
meaning the poets had a direct experience of it. They, when you talk about poetry, they were intuitively apprehending what love is,
mm,
how we experience it as human beings, and he saw his job as, can we systematize this, or can we at least develop a theory to explain what does that do? Like you were saying, our primary relationship is our mother. What does that do to us as far as how we see relationships as adults,
hmm
and especially romantic or love relationships? Uh, and he certainly saw that there was a strong imprint left on us by the impression that we got from our mother. And it
hmm
was an emotional one. It
mm,
wasn't logical that we were
yeah.
thinking, oh,
It was about like safety or security or feeling
yeah,
comfort, pleasant pleasure and unpleasant.
that's right.
There actually, I want to just talk about this because it just wasn't planned, but I just want to mention I was reading Freud's book on the pleasure principle, and you and I talked about this before, but I want to share this idea of how children play hide and seek
Mhm.
because the mother is there and then she's not there. She has to do her work and she leaves the baby in the bassinet. And then when the mother returns, the child, if you've ever noticed when you see children, when they see their mother, they get all excited, even like, there was actually a video of a dog mother, and the puppies are all excited that the mother's there because she represents food and comfort. And so the kids started acting out the game later on of hide and seek. They like playing, like I'm there and then you're there. And we kind of get addicted to that return, the return of that
Mhm.
comfort return. There's some like, it's like a carrot at the end of a stick. We keep wanting that return, wanting more. And that's kind of how the ego's designed. And then we
Yeah,
think that that's love. We're fooled to think when they give us comfort and security, that means love. And we know that sometimes mothers can't be there for us all the time. They're working or they're going through a divorce, or maybe some people I've spoken with, their mothers were depressed. And then they make it mean that they're not lovable because their mother wasn't there. And
yeah,
so early in life, we have that pattern in that we're seeking that return. We're seeking, like, when is she going to stop hiding and come back? And it's that joy of that hide and seek game. And so we
yeah,
play that our whole lives. So we're like seeing unconsciously, uh, if we don't see it in the physical world, we think it's gone. But it's actually there all the time. The love is always there, but we're playing this game of hide and seek with ourselves, is looking for it to return again.
yeah. Yeah, certainly one of the universals, meaning that it's something most of us, or maybe all of us, experience, is this heartbreak,
Yeah.
right? The heartbrokenness. And that's when a lot of people come to the work, is because they've experienced heartbreak. Uh,
But you always say it goes right back, that pain goes back to like right back to where the very first time you were let down. Right,
yes.
very first time. So you think it's about this person who left, this Joe who was so great, and then he left me for another woman, and then but no, it's that first experience of that she's gone, or she pulled away, or she wasn't there when you cried, and then whatever emotionally was stored and imprinted on us.
Yes.
And so when we have that, we meet someone and we're dating and we're like, oh, Joe, this new guy is coming. It's like almost like that eternal return, that return again of the joy is returning back. And it's like that. And then when they go away, it's that hiding. And we all know that when we're dating and texting people, the ghosting is that kind of that game we keep playing, is like waiting for that external to come back.
Yeah.
But the
But
pain is that from that initial
yes,
time.
but if it's a universal, I mean, how do you see it as a function? Why is it set up so that we all have this experience of breaking our heart?
Well, I think that initially the ego's designed to preserve the body. So the mother, if we're helpless as children, so we can't walk, we can't feed ourselves. We're not like most animals, they kind of like the horse walks in the first hours after it's born. Human baby takes a long time. And so we kind of are in survival mode, and we're confusing survival with love.
Mm.
And so if we're pleasing to the mother and we're pleasing, we could stay alive and she'll feed us and take care of us. And so I think it's an instinctual needing to survive. And then the pain is like, if we didn't have that pain, we probably would die. If we didn't have that urge to get her approval, or,
Mm.
we kind of related it to survival.
Yeah, because if we follow kind of Freud's idea, okay, the poets kind of understood a lot
Mm-hmm.
of what love was already through that emotional, intuitive way. Uh, like a poet like Rumi, what he's saying is when your heart gets broken, it's like a calling
Mm.
to understand your deeper self, right? It's
Yes.
breaking the shell of the ego.
Well, I think what Jung said is that in the beginning of life, the first 30 something years of our life, we're building up the ego. So we're driven by that need to look for security externally. We develop
Mm.
ourselves. And then after 30, we individuate. So I think it's a process of us becoming something that we're not and then undoing it. And in that undoing, we get to really discover who we are. I don't think if we're born thinking that we're unlimited, I don't think that would be that big of a surprise. Like that's what Freud was saying with the hide and seek, that if you don't hide, you don't get the joy of the
Mm.
return. So I think we're built with finding the joy of the soul of who we are, is that beautiful return to ourselves. And the heartbreak serves as that tool, but we needed the mechanism to condition us for us to have the joy of returning to our soul and love. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, the
Do you concur or do you disagree?
well, I mean, there's many layers to
Yeah.
that, right? But one of the layers is that most people interpret the heartbreak as the end.
Yes.
In essence, they think, well,
Or they did something wrong,
I
or
did
there's
something
something
wrong,
wrong.
or this is not the way for me to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to protect myself
I have to
and
pull back.
yeah, defend my heart
Mm-hmm.
because this is painful,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I tried something and I got burned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go there
Mm-hmm.
anymore. The mind kind of has that survival mechanism of if something leads to pain, don't go there. Just
Yeah.
don't do that. And so a lot of people interpret the heartbreak as that means I'm not meant to have love or experience love.
Or I have to protect myself so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
And that's really comes from survival. So we have these survival mechanisms that we're
Mm-hmm.
as children, babies, we learn early on before we're 5, emotional survival, but we confuse that with social survival. And so when we get older, it's like it feels like death when someone rejects us. It feels like we're going to
Yeah.
die, and but it really is like you said, the heartbreak is a calling. It's a wake up call for us to say, wait a minute, how much of my life am I hanging on to this? I've had way when I first started doing hypnotherapy, my very first client actually was married for 20 something years and had kids and everything was great. And then the relationship fell apart and it was like, oh my God. But she didn't realize how much she was tolerating and all these
Mm-hmm.
things in her life and how she wasn't truly living until that happened. So it's like we seek all these comforting things. And then when it's taken away, just like what's happening right now in the world, it makes us question, do we really want this in the first place? Do I really want that job? Do I really want that career? Do I really want this relationship? Was it really satisfying?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think the heartbreak helps us see is that if we move toward it, we really find that we've been cushioning ourselves from that heartbreak and tolerating people that aren't willing to love us the way we want to be loved and be with us the way we want to be and us being open the way we want to share love. We've been kind of holding ourselves back all along. um, I know a lot of times when I was first before I did this work and I was very unconscious, I remember just not telling people how I felt. Like I would just avoid talking to them. I didn't know how to like communicate. And then I remember dating this one guy, and I was telling him how like he wasn't being open to me, and how he was shut down, and how he didn't want to. And he was like, no, that's you. And it was so weird, like to have that conversation. It was like, we don't even realize that what we're in these patterns and of protecting ourselves. And so when we get those heartbreaks, give us an opportunity to say, what is that? So the pattern, so defining love, let's before we get into the patterns, is love to me is that it's kind of that unconditional self of knowing all of who we are, all our human self, all the faults that human life has, you know, the little things that we do, the behaviors that we do that aren't really, we don't not proud of sometimes, and then accepting all the parts of ourselves that haven't been integrated yet, like our divinity and our love, and so it's true love is really loving all of us, like loving every aspect of
Mm.
ourselves with non-judgment. And so it's not like loving it like, oh, I love that a fact that I'm insecure, or loving the fact that I get angry sometimes. It's that kind of it's not love in that sense. It's more like an acceptance. It's more like a non-judgment, more of a blissful kind of energy
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
And
again,
that's what you bring into a relationship, is that
yeah.
kind of calm sense of you're not defining yourself by your
Mm.
behaviors, and you're just knowing that innately you are worthy. You have, you're the soul. You're that awakening soul that we talk about.
Yeah. Rumi talks about dying, right? Like not physically, right? But the death of the old self in uh, being able to kind of surrender completely to love. And that dying, of course, he's talking about the ego, the
Mm,
persona in the Jungian sense, that you have to be able to go beyond the ego to really
mm,
experience love. If
yes.
you want to stay protected and stay safe, you won't be able to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that ability to transcend the ego,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I mean,
That's what I'm saying. Like that, the ego wants to push away in the
yeah.
shadow the things that aren't acceptable and that are too light or too dark for society. Like we can't walk in and really feel good, like light about ourselves, or love ourselves, or even people get mad when people brag, you know, like I'm really proud of what I did. And it's like, ooh, you know, be modest. And then all the things about you know, we don't like about ourselves, like, I acted a little rude in that to that customer service rep, or I was being impatient here.
Mhm.
And it's that kind of, the ego defends against that and pushes that in the shadow. And that's what you're saying, is that that ego kind of little limited surface self is just trying to survive. And that's not really, you can't love from that place, because you're in defense at the same time. You can't be
Yeah.
open to hearted and defending at the same time.
Yeah, so I guess the definition would be then it's a transcendent state of mind where you're able to perceive the beloved, the other, uh, on an equal basis as
Mm.
yourself.
So it's basically identifying not from the ego, but from the soul, from the true self. And then you could see someone else from their true self. And then their stuff that they're not perfect as a human being. You can
Mhm.
see above that, and you see the divinity. It's that saying that they say in yoga, namaste, which is the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. And so it's about recognizing the divine in you. And that's really where Jung's work, I think, takes over, because that's really what individuation is. It's about letting go of our identification with the ego, like making it shiny and perfect. You know, when I first started doing hypnotherapy, it was all about training my mind to think I'm good enough, I'm confident, and I'm a beautiful woman, and men love me, and you act calm, and
Affirmations.
those are great.
Mm.
But if that's who you think you're, this like kind of a physical, like surface self, you can't help but defend, because you're putting out there what you think other people will find pleasing. And that's the uh, That's the definition of the ego, is that's the how the ego is designed. Again, for survival, because we need each other to survive. But there is a higher level of being. And if we want a higher level love, that's what we need to see. So what were you going to
So
say? The half a person?
no, the second question is then why do we play out these patterns? A lot of our clients come to us and say, here's the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this pattern,
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't changed.
Yeah, I know I attract unavailable people. I know I have a hard time keeping boundaries. I know that I settle a lot in relationships. I keep doing this.
Yeah.
But why do I keep doing it?
Yeah. And part of the answer is that insight is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
We know insight is an important element in transformation and personal transformation.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to understand what kind of pattern have I been playing out, and almost see the connection to your early history.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about, our relationship with our mother. Like she, in a very simplistic way, she gives us the blueprint for
the world.
How we're going to perceive the world, and by default, how we're going to perceive the other person in our life.
And I think here's the important thing is that a lot of people will say, "Oh no, now I'm screwed." They don't say that. They used to say the F word. I'm effed because my mother was this, or she was an alcoholic, or she was depressed, or she wasn't there for me, or they got divorced, or she was angry or critical, whatever it is. Here's the thing: what you want to do is not try to fix all that. Like I think that's a lot of what happens in personal development. We're trying to fix the past. We're trying to say, "Oh well, I had this past that wasn't." Set me up for not having love. So I need to fix it. And we don't need to fix the past. We need to be in the present and start to take steps forward in who we want to be in the future. So if we're fixing the past, what we're doing is we're shining up that ego. We're making the ego better, putting little healing salve on the ego and making it better and, fluffing it up a little bit and making the persona pretty, but we're still carrying on that resentment or that and even the assumption that what your mother did was wrong. That kind of she was wrong and now my life is screwed up and now I gotta like forgive her and all those things that I think keep us stuck in the past. And really to break a pattern is to say recognize the pattern and even know that pattern doesn't define you. Because if you try to fix it, what you're doing is saying that pattern is more powerful than me. And there's a part of you, your true self has never been harmed, is not affected by that pattern. It's like you could step into that tomorrow. You see a lot of people have those spontaneous changes and they're in this like life-threatening situation and they're like kind of forced out of their pattern. They have to like dig to get there. And when you said that heartbreak is the perfect time. I mean, even now what's going on in the world, these things that are in upheaval, it's the perfect time to say, I need to step into something else. I need to stop looking backwards, trying to fix everything and move forward and say, who do I want to be now today? Recognizing I know what I'm conditioned to be, but I want to start becoming or seeing things as they really are and me as I really am.
Yeah.
And part of it is, I think, working with the shadow is one of the ways that we face it, but we're not working with the shadow to fix the past. We're working with the shadow to make our unconscious conscious. So you want to talk about the shadow a little bit of how that works? Or?
Yeah, and the shadow, it's almost impossible to understand the shadow without understanding projection.
Yeah,
because projection is the defense mechanism that the shadow or the mind uses to try to absolve itself of the shadow, to say, I'm not those things. Other people are those things. I can see it in other people, but it's not me. And of course, in relationships, the other is a perfect target for our shadow because they're right there. And when we're suffering or experiencing difficulty in the relationship, who do we have to blame? Well, it must be, if it's not me, it's the other person that's causing me these problems. And we repeat those patterns again.
Well, it's like if you think about your mother, that's a projection too. you're thinking I mean, physically she's the source of survival, but all this other stuff is projection of that she is the divine, the divine, the God to me, the divine in me. And then we forget that it's in us.
Yeah, so projection, it cuts both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
You project the divine onto your partners. They're going to come
yeah,
save me. They're the source of my happiness. They're the source of comfort and love and acceptance. And when we're in love, everything feels right with the world. When you're in love, you're just like, I'm invincible. Like, you kind of have that feeling of I'm invincible because this person has said, I like you. And you get, even if you're just first meet someone, you get that kind of,
yes,
that feeling. And that's really the projection that we're feeling, but we're seeing our own self, our divine self, but we don't realize it.
yeah, and a lot of people think that, oh, if we're saying that it's projection, that we're devaluing it in a sense,
Yeah.
but it's not really a devaluing it, because we're just understanding the way the mind works.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when we talk about reality, we project our reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way we can experience it.
Mm.
And so love is no different. We have to experience it through our own mind.
I love that because you had said once to a woman, you were like, she was having trouble with her husband and some issues, and you were like, you can't experience another person except through your own filter. So when you see a person, you're seeing it through your own mind. Like, you can't like step outside of your mind and say, is Rob really Rob? Or I'm seeing in my mind, I have an image of Rob, my judgments of Rob, my feelings for Rob are all from me. Like, I can't, there's no independent, objective Rob out there except through my own mind. And so this is why I think you always say we don't fall in love with the same person. We're seeing people through our filter. So for someone on you're dating and you're like, ooh, this guy's great. Someone else would be like, oh, that's not my type. And so it's that kind of, you have to realize that love is here, what you see. And then the amount of love that you can feel for yourself is what you bring to the relationship. So if you don't feel love for yourself, or you're connected to the source, and that person becomes a source, they're going to that's kind of the way that relationship's going to play out. And that's why your heart breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And then your heart breaks, and then it's an opportunity to say, wait a minute, it's like the illusion ended and you have to go back inside. It's always, every time you're heartbroken, it's such an opportunity to pivot back in and stop the projection. So it's almost like we create our own heartbreak in a way unconsciously so we can find ourselves.
Yes,
Which is kind of weird, but that's kind of the purpose of it. It's to break us the pattern, because it can't uphold it. The other person cannot uphold. And we all know when someone loves us and they're infatuated with us, and we're just like, oh, wait a minute, like, slow down, mister. They're so into you, that you're freaking out. You're kind of like, this is, you're seeing something that's not really me, or you don't trust it. And that's true. You shouldn't trust that kind of deep, total projection when they're looking at you in that pedestal as well.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It becomes this kind of house of mirrors.
Yeah.
But back to the heartbreak then. If the heartbreak is an opportunity, like Rumi says, the wailing of broken hearts is the pathway to God. It gives us that opportunity to integrate our shadow, in essence, right? Because if we examine what happened in that relationship, like, how did it fall apart? And what was I expecting in the first place? In the expectation, we see the positive projection, right? The divinity of that person's going to save me, and that they're going to give me everything I desire, and give me that kind of oceanic sense of being in one with the universe. And then when that projection starts falling apart, and we see the human being, that they're flawed, they're just like us. They're not this.
Or we get angry
being
that they don't call us, and they're mistreating us, or they're being passive now, and they were into us and now they're not, and that kind of, like, you get angry at them, and
yes,
but you already gave them all that responsibility to make you happy.
Right. And if they can make you that happy, and they're the source of that
Yeah.
divinity, then they can also take it away, of course,
Mm.
and take you to the opposite place.
Yes.
Instead of heaven, to, you're in hell in essence. And therefore you have to understand projection in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you get caught up in that kind of uh, uh, expecting the other to fulfill all your needs,
Mm-hmm.
when, like we were saying in the beginning, love is really a giving.
Mm-hmm.
It's an expression.
Sharing, like
Yeah,
more
nobody
like.
can really fill you with love if it's not coming from within you,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have the capacity to express it. So this integrating of the shadow in the relationship.
Which means it's you're retrieving the projection.
Yes.
And a lot of people think integrating the shadow means I'm going to get rid of all the negativity, get rid of my shadow. No, it means that I'm going to take back my divine self and say it's in me, it's not in you. And then you could really truly see the other
Mm.
person as who they are versus through the filter of the ego. You start to see, it's almost like you have two minds. You have the divine mind, the intellect, that's that pure awareness, and then you have the ego that's like you're wearing like glasses that have a filter of all the past experience and you're seeing them through that. Wouldn't you want to see someone basically almost with your third eye? Like you see them like not, you see them through another aspect of your psyche. I mean, that's what kind of how I felt when I met you. I mean, I still had my ego and stuff like that, but there was something about that pleasant projection that I felt. It felt like home because when I was around you, I didn't feel like you were going to leave. And that's, I think now I'm realizing it just now in this moment is the reason why it felt like home is because in some intuitive way, I knew that I was feeling myself. I was feeling the home within myself. And that's where you can truly be in love with someone, is that you don't expect them to fill an empty cup. You come fully with that love, and you don't have that all the fears that you would normally have of them slipping away, or that I can't wait to see them again, and now if they don't show up tomorrow I'm going to fall apart. That kind of a roller coaster. It felt very solid. Like I mean, I remember thinking he's never going to leave. Like he's not leaving, or it feels like home, or it was solid. And I think it's because of that acknowledging,
You
like
couldn't get rid of me.
I couldn't get rid of you. No, but it was more like it was coming from inside of me, not
Yeah.
through you. Like I was seeing you, but I was seeing myself, and it was coming from that like third eye kind of divine mind. And that's really a beautiful place to
Yeah.
love someone, because then those expectations that the ego has, no one can fulfill. Oh my God, can you imagine? I mean, we're already
Yes.
pissed off at our parents for not being there for us. Can you imagine what we're going to project onto a partner is like, why didn't you love me? And right.
Right. And
And
it's
that's not love.
so
It's
unfair.
transactional.
Yeah, it's so unfair to kind of place that burden on another person,
Yes.
right? You're going to save me, you're going to fulfill all
And
my
that's why we
needs.
get scared when other people
Yeah.
project that onto us. When someone's pursuing us, we feel that kind of tightening, and they're going to control us. And then I'm going to feel responsible for giving them love back. And, it's a burden. And love shouldn't be a burden. It should be like this place of openness and giving. And you just show up as you are.
Yeah, so ultimately the relationship, when we approach it from this perspective, it is the perfect platform from which to grow,
Hmm.
to do our personal development, our spiritual life, whatever you want to call it. In this kind of true relationship, you're able to grow because you're able to get in touch with that deeper true self in you,
Hmm.
not just the ego persona, but right, because love opens you up to that possibility of transcending the ego.
And we've all
Uh,
felt it when we're dating or we're in a new relationship. It's like the emotions overwhelm the mind, and then we get into ego, and we get in very
mm,
reactionary, and there's a lot of passion there, and it's great, but we're not like balanced sometimes, and we're thinking with our head, we're moving with our heart, and a lot of our ego basically takes over the decision making process, and it'll make the decisions based on security,
mm.
survival, and how do I keep my heart closed, not open it too much. and protect myself. And so that keeps people at that distance. And so when we think about the heart, the courageous heart, what is that? What would we do to change?
Yeah.
And how do we get there?
They have, yeah, have to work with you.
Well, first of all, the courageous heart doesn't mean that you have armor on and that you're out there fighting a battle. The courageous heart means you drop the armor and you see that there's no fear, there's no harm to be. No one can ever really hurt the true me. And a lot of people ask me, how did you get, everything you wanted, the career, the relationship? And I always say I never gave up. And it's because every time I had a disappointment, sure, it's like the tendency to shut down our heart. The ego's a tendency is to kind of shut down, be careful, pull back. We've all done it. But the courageous heart it stays open. It stays open to knowing that there's no threat. There really is truly no one's going to kill you, if you get your heart broken. Like the only reason we're heartbroken is because we gave them permission to. We have that understanding.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is understanding that the pain it's inherent in love,
Mm-hmm.
right? We all know that if I love this person and I allow, let's say, my heart to be open to them, there's a type of suffering involved already because you're going to experience kind of what they're experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to take on their burdens, become your burdens.
Yeah, like
And
their emotion. If you're not comfortable with your own emotions and the upsets that you have, why bring someone else in? It's like a tornado coming into your home. Why bring that in too? Because they're
yeah,
going to have their feelings, and so I think a lot of people are more comfortable in their bubble, and they say they don't like to be. They want to find someone, but they kind of like being alone because they don't have to deal with. They can't even deal with their own emotions. Meanwhile, deal with other people. Is
yeah,
that what you're saying? Is
yeah. And
that kind of
part of it is loss, right? Because why do we hold up back? Because we're afraid of loss, right?
yes?
That what if this person rejects me or leaves me or all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, loss is inherent in it, again, because none of us are going to live
Yeah, I
forever in
know.
the
I don't want to
form.
think about you dying.
But that's part of the deal, right? That
Yeah.
if you want to experience uh, that transcendent love in the human form, you're going to have to accept that inevitable loss, in a sense. That
Mm-hmm.
it's part of it, in a sense that
It's
you're
like you're dealing with the devil. You sign up with blood that I fall in love with this person and I know one day you're going to be gone and I'm going to have to live my life without you.
Yes,
Or maybe I'll
but
go first.
it also proves that love is real, in a sense,
Yeah.
because you're saying, I understand that, but I'm still
I'm
in.
signing up.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
still in.
It's like a soldier going to battle knowing that maybe they're going to die, but they're going to, because of the journey or their purpose is much greater. And that's really, I think, come to have a courageous heart. We need to know what our purpose is for love. And if our purpose is to survive, we're going to settle for a relationship that's mediocre or not at all because we feel like it's a threat to our survival if we get heartbroken again.
Hmm.
So, what do you, what is it, the courage? How do we cultivate that courage? And, a lot of times, people, when they start facing the shadow work, you know, law of attraction stuff is great and it's really nice and light and you can think positive. But then when we do the shadow work, it kind of gets to a place where that's where people start to resist. And the resistance is that fear of what's in the shadow. It's stuff we pushed away. So, of course, the ego is going to continue to defend against it. And Jung says it takes great courage to face your own shadow. And that's really what the courageous heart is, to face the parts of ourself that we've pushed away that are too light and too dark for society and face ourselves and really come to know who we really are. And it's a beautiful journey, but the ego will resist. And so we need to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. What would you say to someone who resists the shadow work?
I like the idea of cultivating, because it is very much. like we're cultivating a garden.
Mm,
Uh, we have the seeds. We all have the seed of love, the divine potential in
mm,
us. But you have to cultivate it. It's not going to grow if you don't pay attention to it, if you
mm,
don't care for it, if you don't provide the conditions for its growth.
mm,
So that's why we have this incredible consciousness, because we're able to determine what are the conditions for that I need to grow that divinity within me, that
mm,
that love, that spirituality. And you have to ask yourself honestly, what is it that I can do, given my current situation, my history, my tendencies, all that stuff, to cultivate that openness, that
mm,
courageous
mm.
heart.
Well, you know what I think I see is that the way we're with ourselves is the way we're going to be in relationship. So if you pull back or you get triggered because of criticism or you get hurt or you interpret something as criticism, that's coming from inside of you. And so it's about being with yourself and not
Mm,
pushing yourself away. You know, I remember when I was first starting doing my journey, someone had said to me, it's like this part of you that you just want to get rid of. Like that insecure Debbie. I want to just get rid of her. She has no room in my life. I don't like her. She screws up my love life. She's bad. The parts like, you get mad at yourself and you're just kind of like, oh, I don't want to be like that anymore. Or someone accuses you of something and you're just like triggered and you know that it's true in a way, but you don't realize it. That's being intimate with yourself and being courageous to look at those judgments, at those labels that we've given, that we kind of judge ourselves by, and realize that it's a battle within ourselves that we're really dealing with. Like you said, the yardstick we measure others, we measure ourselves. So when we're in a relationship, we're really just, it's an inner battle. And so many times when I've done shadow work, I remember just being like projecting. That person's so bad. And then I realized, oh my God, it's me. I'm fighting. I'm fighting an idea that, I'm perceiving that this person says I'm not good enough. And I'm fighting that person. How dare they? But really, I'm fighting my own fear of not being good enough. And so we have to kind of come inside and face that yucky feeling and see that it's not real. And that's really where we free our mind. Otherwise, if we don't free it, we're going to keep projecting it out there, and we're going to misread people, their interpretation of us as it's really what we feel about ourselves.
yeah.
And so I feel like that's really courage. The courage comes is to go inside and face those parts that we push away, the insecurity, the angry, the jealous, the feeling not good enough, the fears that we have, is to face them head on and be strong with ourselves and love ourselves in that way. Not like a pinky, soft, little light love, but really a truly like, it's okay, like seeing it as neutral. It doesn't define me if I act silly one day or act cold one day. It doesn't define me. What defines me is my soul, which has never been harmed by the human experience.
Yeah.
And so that's where shadow work, I think, in a nutshell, really helps you see, is that you see this illusion of this image of yourself that you're kind of trying to keep up, and you see that it's just a facade. It's not real. It's so thin, like paper, and you've been defending it your whole life. And then you realize, oh my God, there's this other me that's like so great and so powerful that I'm not even letting out because I'm too busy keeping this paper mache part of me up, propping it
Hmm.
up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people interpret that self-love as polishing up the
Yeah,
persona, the
the little
ego.
paper, making it thicker, maybe, or
Yeah, but
repainting it.
but the self in self-love is really the higher self,
Yes.
meaning that 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 divine kernel in you that you need to cultivate,
Mm,
and having the courage to go where it leads you,
mm,
because often it leads you into what from the ego you perceive as the scary
mm-hmm,
stuff, right? It
mm-hmm,
leads you into unknown parts of yourself,
mm.
and you have to be willing to follow that voice and really listen to it and obey it in a sense.
So the courageous heart is really you taking on yourself, the journey of personal development, self individuation. Basically,
Hmm.
it's that that how do I see my patterns, not judge myself for them, but then transcend outside of them without trying to fix myself. And it's kind of a tightrope because we have the tendency to judge it as wrong, the pattern. And so the first step is to realize that what you're seeing is a projection in love. The second step is to understand that projection is reflecting your patterns. And then the third step is to do the shadow work so you can really have a direct experience. Now, a lot of you are listening to this and saying, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. I just need to come from my true self." You can't come through it by listening just to us talk about it. You have to do the shadow work. You have to, you know that you face the shadow if you've been extremely uncomfortable, where you are like, it's a heightened emotional experience. And then it's like it's a force, almost like a that breaks you free. It's like indescribable. It's not something where you have an insight and, oh, I feel better and now I understand my patterns. It's not like that happy little feathery insight. It's more like a powerful, like you feel your whole body shift. I mean, a lot of our clients would say that, I mean, we see them and they look different after they do it. Like their physical changes in their face, the stress in their face goes away. They're glowing and it's almost like that little pent up persona that they've been trying to hold on is finally let go, and then the true self starts to shine. And that's where you're really attractive to someone and you're courageous. You're not worried. You're not propping up that paper mache you anymore. You're saying, this is who I am. But it's not about an intellectual understanding. It's really through the shadow work. And we recommend coaching. You have to get someone. We have plenty of coaches that we trained in our coach training. We have our mentors here. Rob and I do it. It really is worth the time, because how much longer do you want to keep repeating the patterns?
Yeah, and it seems to be our destiny, right? We incarnate in essence to challenge ourselves through this process.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't do it, it's like we're missing the opportunity that we've been giving. In Buddhism, they talk about this precious human life. Why is it so precious? Well, it's because we have this opportunity to really face the scary stuff in us and to integrate it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To see that it's really us that we've been hiding from and running from.
Yeah, it's almost like the more discomfort you could face about yourself and turn the mirror inside, the more you will love yourself. A lot of people run away from that. They run. And I've seen a lot of people who come to us and then they go off and do like a simpler law of attraction kind of coaching. And then they come back and they're like, okay, that didn't get me anywhere. They waited a year and they come back, and your ego will resist this. The ego will resist working with the shadow because it takes courage. Now you have to ask yourself, are you courageous? Are you willing to face yourself in a real deep way? Because the deeper you can dig within yourself, the deeper love you'll be able to have. The more the connected you'll feel to someone else in your life. If you keep it on the surface and you're that paper mache you that we've all been conditioned to be, that relationship that you meet, you see this with your family and friends. They're distracted. They're watching Netflix. They're, not thinking about personal development, and they live that they don't have those deep conversations and that zest for life, that passion for spiritual work and, understanding deeper concepts and reading poetry and that richness that life is. And that's really what it is. It's that journey within that keeps life more interesting while we're here. I mean, and then to share that with someone else is really amazing. So that's the courageous heart, is to understand that love is already inside of you, that it is not a romantic love, but it's more of a divine self-reflection. We have patterns that the ego created based on our early experience with our mother, and then carried on through life looking for it outside of us, trying to reclaim, like we keep looking for ourselves, our divine self, in everything, in money and career and love. And we're just chasing this carrot, but when it's really inside of us. So when we have a heartbreak, it gives us an opportunity to say, okay, wait a minute, let me look inside.
Yeah.
Let me turn around and stop grasping out there. Let me start grasping inside. Let me look inside. Let me dig inside. And can you imagine having that much passion for chasing love as you're chasing yourself, chasing your spirit? Imagine that like search being so important that you die for it. You know, you're hungry
Yeah.
for that. And that's really what we want, is the passion we want for those material things. We want to turn it to a passion toward our own self-discovery.
Absolutely. We want to attend to it. We want to pay attention and create the conditions for its growth, for our own growth.
So what questions do you have
Let's
while we're
see.
here? Let's
Yeah, some
see.
interesting comments.
The name of the fish that builds the mandala, that the sands attract a mate. I don't know that, but that's a beautiful fish.
Yeah, I saw that video. It's an incredible sand mandala that it creates, right?
Yeah, and that's really what it is. It's that you don't have to chase it. You have to, of course, you have to take action, but you'll attract what the mandala, the person you are, will attract the mates that you attract. There'll be a reflection of what's in your mind. I don't see any questions. I think everyone's just kind of thinking about their journey. So we'll be posting in the group. We'll see you at the 7 spiritual laws, 7 spiritual principles. You don't like laws, legal. And we'll have the next session on Monday, module number 3. We'll talk about emotional wisdom. And then we'll have another section on Thursday. So we're really excited to see you in the program. Okay, here's the question. Does the third eye always see the good in everyone? Well, I think purely it sees the divine in everyone. I wouldn't say good or bad. You know, we want to see, there's no good or bad in the divine higher mind. Everything is it's a non-dual way of looking.
Yeah.
So it sees things as they basically as possibility. So it doesn't have a label of, oh, now I see all the good in that person. I mean, of course, when we're coming from that place, we are more tolerant of other people's piccadillies. You know, their little things that, you know, a human person, you know, the superficial stuff we're more tolerant with. We start to see them with a different type of perspective. But I wouldn't say good or bad.
The Upanishads say that as you progress on your spiritual path of enlightenment, you start to see everything as yourself. And I think that's what you're getting at, is that through that spiritual vision, you're understanding that everything you're experiencing is reflecting your higher self, in essence. There's nothing outside of it, and therefore there's nothing that is alien or bad or terrible. They're simply aspects of your own mind, of your higher mind, in essence.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for this beautiful talk, this beautiful message. I'm facing a decision today. Would love to hear your inspirational words on that. There's no bad decisions. So make a decision, and then if you make the decision, you'll make it right. And you can always make another decision. So, you know, a lot of people ask, like, how do I make a decision? You could just ask, what is your fear? What's the worst thing that can happen? And then just be prepared that I could still, it's not going to kill me. And you take the anxiety around it, and then you'll be able to see the decision in a clearer way. Versus if you're not aware of what you fear, your ego's going to make the decision. Your ego's going to go, let's protect me. Don't do that. And you're not really going to see it clearly. So if you can look for the worst case, like what is the fear around it? I can live with it if that happens. Then you'll be more clear in making the decision, because it'll come from really a place of choice, not of a protective place. Many people talk about how we can have it all. Is what exactly for you is to have it all? Yeah, that's a great question. I often think that's kind of an ego idea. Have it all. You know, it's like, what is that? Is that like all the material things in the world, but then you die, and do you really have it? Because it's the world in the material world is temporary. So I think having it all personally is loving where you are right now. That's really where you're truly having it all, is that wherever you have in your life right now, you're grateful for, you can create, but you feel complete right now. That's having it all.
Mm.
It's like not needing, well, when this happens, I'll be happy. When that happens, I'll be happy. Great
Yeah,
question.
that's a good question.
The more we integrate the shadow, do we then we perceive people and things differently than before? Does this change attraction and what is magnetized our way? Yes. Um, Actually, yeah, because when you haven't worked with your shadow, you're going to be attracted to people who reflect your shadow. So you're at the unrealized parts of yourself that you have judgments on. And so based on whatever that is, so the things you cling to, the things you push away will show up in that relationship. When you work through the shadow, then you start to see yourself as you truly are, and you start to see people in a different way. So you may even attract a different type. Different things will become important to you because when we're in shadow, we're actually looking for people. Here's a perfect example of the shadow. I work with a lot of women that, they're very, very worried about looks with the guy or age. He has to be a certain age, he has to be certain looks. And it's because their shadow is unattractive and old. And so they're looking for someone, attracted to only people that fit a certain realm that match their, like, if someone's too old or not attractive, it triggers them and they're like, avoid that person. When they start to see that and accept themselves and they start defining themselves as just their physical appearance and their age, and they start to look with their heart, they start to see different types of people. What they used to find unattractive now starts to be more attractive. They start to see that, okay, maybe he's losing his hair, but you know what? He has a heart of gold. Wow, I really want to be with that person. Not Rob. He has a full head. But you know what I'm saying? And it's not that they're unattractive, but the ego has these like harsh judgments of what's attractive, what's not attractive, what age is appropriate, what age is not appropriate, how much money they make, and all these superficial things that we think are going to give us security, safety, and love is not really what gives us that. And as we know, we end up not getting it. And so, yes, it does change. And things aren't really magnetized your way. You're actually projecting. So everyone that you meet is you're projecting, and your perception shifts. So it's really the law of perception versus the law of magnetism, is that there could be 100 men in the room. And if your ego says, I'm unlovable and I need to defend myself, and there's one guy in there that's, totally open-hearted, won't even see him. You won't talk to him. And you'll see, wow, look at all the men out there. They're terrible. But if you have the higher, you work with your shadow and you're open to love, it doesn't matter those 99 people. You will be drawn to that one that is the one who's open-hearted. So it's like your perception starts to shift. You wouldn't even see those other people. So it's not like magnetizing and then they're going to show up. They're already there. You're just not seeing them. So many of my clients, I just want to say one more thing. I know you want to say something. When I went to my book signing in Denver, and I remember so many people said to me, I met my person. He's been in my life for 20 years, and I didn't realize he was my best friend, and he was my soulmate. And I just didn't see him clearly. So he's already there. Most likely, a lot of the people that are in your life are already there. You don't even see them.
Yeah, I really like that idea of, instead of attraction, it is about perception, and we can only perceive what we're capable of absorbing in ourselves, in essence of really being conscious of knowing. And that's why if we don't love ourselves, our higher self, or let's say we're not aware that there is this divinity, this love within us, we think it's out there, it's very hard to find because it's really not out there. Right? But we're projecting that it's out there, that I have to find it in another person. That other person is going to bring it to me. That doesn't exist, and therefore it's very hard to really find it that way. We're always kind of attracting simply the shadow element, which is the fear of, like you say, if I fear I'm old, that's what's going to show up in essence.
Yeah. So it's like that in the course that we talked about, the 3 levels, the causal mind, the subtle mind, and the gross mind. That subtle mind is kind of the filter. And so we're all looking at the same world, but we're seeing it through our own filter. And that subtle mind, the unconscious judgments and conscious judgments, with like kind of the inner thoughts and conscious thoughts, and then the unconscious mostly gets projected out into the world. So the world doesn't change, we change. You've heard that before. Things don't change, we change.
If you want to change the world, you
Change
change yourself.
Just look at yourself, then make the change. I can't sing, but yes, I want no thing. I would change that to I don't need anything, but you could still want to create in the world. You could still want, have a desire for having a love experience, or a desire for having, doing the work you love, or to help others. And I mean, while we're here, we want to create. You just don't want to need it. There's a difference between a want and a need. So if you need it, then you're in survival mode. I'm so glad women, for the most part, don't lose their hair. That's one less thing to worry about. Yes. But, a lot of women, they think they're uncomfortable with their bodies. And so I can't tell you how many people complain about their own weight, but then they're always complaining about the guys that they're dating and their weight. And it's like, I know I have to deal with it, but it's like you kind of know it, but you're not even seeing it, that's why you're judging the men for what they look like, because we're judging for what we look like. And here's the thing is that we are not our bodies. Our bodies is just kind of like this very, very, like the paper mache part of ourselves. We have to really see ourselves for who we really are. And then we could see people for who they really are. And it doesn't mean that we have to settle for men that are overweight or bald and all those things, but we stop having that harsh judgment, because what we're pushing away, we end up keep creating. So I keep, I don't want to have cheaters in my life. Guess what we keep creating? I don't want to have, these ugly guys asking me out on Match.com. Well, guess what? They'll keep coming. They'll keep coming. That's all you'll see. Or the guys that ghost me, they'll keep coming, because you're pushing it away. And so we have to stop pushing stuff away.
Well, we
and
resist.
ask us what is it? What's the threat here? What's the threat here? So that's kind of the process we take our clients through, is that we start to look at everything as kind of an exploration, a workshop of our understanding ourselves. Thanks for the examples. They are already there. Shifts our perception. Yes. This all makes so much sense. Thank you so much. Yes. Yeah. It's really, it's very empowering to know that we have everything we need. Love could be a moment away. We just have to really, really start to see ourselves differently. As we see ourselves differently, not like we said, in that superficial pump up the ego and I'm confident and I'm strong and I'm getting a makeover, but see ourselves as we're indestructible. We are the courageous heart. That to have that courageous heart and just keep putting ourselves out there, keep willing to, risk that heartbreak, because we know that it's not going to crush us, because love is that important. To be, like you had said once, you have to be willing to get your heart broken in order to find love. It's like you have to be willing to take the worst case scenario and say, I could do this. I can handle it. Because I know that the heartbreak is only my own, something about me, that it's really not a threat. That's where we can truly love. And I think too that it gives other people permission to be themselves as well. That when we really become a gift to that other person, because they're like, wow, I feel so relaxed around you. I could be myself. I'm not judged all the time. I don't feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I feel it's like you and I have been together, how long? 15 years almost now. And it's been like, we never fight, and it's easy because we understand who we are. And I think that's really the great relationship. I mean, we have disagreements. I am perfect sometimes, but it's not that like always irritated, like that irritated
Life's
feeling.
too short for that.
Unless you disagree. Do you agree that we get along?
Yes.
Okay. Keep the story straight.
Yeah. Life's too short to spend it unhappy, miserable, fighting, all that stuff. You start to see how precious time is, and you want to take advantage of it. You want to be happy. You want to be fulfilled, but all those things come from within. Again, the emphasis is simply this: look within, do the internal work, cultivate your heart, your spiritual courage, and the rest will take care of itself. That's the spiritual principles taught by almost every
Mm.
every spiritual tradition on the planet, you have to look within. You have to do the internal work.
So here's a great question, and we hear this a lot. Can you
Mm.
elaborate on why the true self cannot be hurt? How is that so?
Mm.
Please help me understand. In my profession, I have heard the most traumatic childhood stories that are almost unbelievable that would affect everyone. We're not saying those things don't affect the ego. So we would have to look at the ego versus the true self, and think of the true self as this pure, like we talk about in the course, the causal mind, and then the things that happen to that, on top of that, that causal mind and the gross mind, that never affects the core. It's just stored in that subtle mind. So the ego kind of is, in a way, when these things happen out in the world, it's those protective mechanisms. So when we have like traumas or really terrible things, the ego knows how to protect us. That's a beautiful part of the ego. But most people, they think that's all who they are, is the patterns in the ego.
Mm.
But underneath that, that causal mind, that pure awareness, is just the witness watching everything. That's the true self. So we don't want to say the true self is the best ego that we can have. The true self is really the part that has never, like, came in and never harmed. And we have, the ego has the human experience, but then the other part is there. So it's the this story in the Upanishads where they say there's two birds sitting in a tree. One bird eats the sweet and sour fruits of life, so traumas and terrible childhoods, and all the terrible things that happen in the world, and the good things in the world. And then the other bird is watching with non-attachment, and that other bird is the other part of ourselves, which is the true self. So it's like two parts. But we're not, like in therapy, they don't really work on the spirit. They work on, just the conditioned persona ego level. It's about ego maintenance. And in a sense, yes, the ego is affected by these traumas. So we're not saying the ego isn't affected, but the true self is. Do you want to add something as a therapist, or in past lives? How would you tell a client, if you're working with people like that, that have traumas, like how
Yeah.
would you talk about this? Because it is kind of a different perspective. It's a spiritual perspective versus a psychological perspective.
It is.
It's a spiritual psychology versus
Right.
just traditional psychology.
Yeah, and in spiritual psychology, the idea is simply to look at the whole person, right? If we just understand ourselves as a physical being, we're leaving out the best part, which is the subtle mind and the spirit and all that. And we know that's not our reality. That's not how we live. We don't live just in as bodies and that's it. We have dreams. We have emotions.
Oh yeah, there's this other part of ourselves that.
Yeah, we experience life in a very subjective, magical way, right? That nobody can really explain. Not even the best science, the best neuroscience can't really explain how does the body create this thing we call the subjective experience, the qualia. But spiritual traditions do explain that, right? They go straight at it and they say, this is the true you, right? Because the body is always changing, the ego is always changing, but the constant in you is that pure awareness. It's always there. It's always been there.
Because if you think about it, that part of you that remembers everything that's happened is not memory. I mean, the memory is stored somewhere, right, in the psyche, but there's another part that remembers the memory. So that part that remembers the memory is your true self. So it's always there. It's just covered up. Like I said, like your true self is this like beautiful, I'm trying to make it a beautiful part of us. And then it's like a covering that's the subtle mind, the thoughts and feelings that we have, and the kind of things we can't touch, the memories and the perceptions and all that. And then on top of that is the gross mind, which is the physical world, our bodies and what we experience out in the physical world. So there's many layers to our experience. And so, but most people, they're looking at just the physical experience. They're looking at the gross mind. They don't even realize their thoughts have any impact on anything, or that their thoughts even have their own individual perception. I mean, a lot of people think that what I believe, everyone believes, and that, it's like a lot of people say, well, they stepped over my boundaries. It's wrong to be aggressive, and it's wrong to be this, and there's these rules that we're supposed to follow. But the subtle mind is very individual. We make our rules up as we go. I've seen so many people that had really traumatic childhoods that have transformed. I mean, look at Oprah. I mean, she slept on the porch in her house. She was sexually abused. I mean, she had so many things happen, and she is the richest woman in the world. And so, those things can't define you. I mean, if we stay and let them, they will. And so the true self is reminding us that no matter what happened to me, and Jung says this, I'm free to choose who I want to become. And that really is a gift. And we don't want to ignore those things. We want to honor, the hurts that we have as human beings. We don't want to push them away and make, it doesn't, everything happens for a reason, and let's just let it go and just be spiritual. We want to work with them. We want to work with those feelings, because in that experience, or the leftover, the imprints of those experiences are our freedom. It's a key to a deeper realization. So can you imagine if someone who had an easy life, for them to have this spiritual awakening, maybe a little spiritual awakening, but someone who's had a real tough life and really tough challenges, oh my God, they're going to have the most incredible experience of spiritual life, because they've almost like dug deeper into their pain to see something else. And so those are the people that are really, if they are conscious enough, they can really transform. And that's what we mean by it can never be hurt, because no matter what happened to you, you have within you all the power to transcend anything that happens. We are so resilient, and that we can't look at ourselves as a wounded bird that's, we got to handle with kid gloves. We have to look at ourselves as saying, yeah, that sucked. I'm hurt. That was terrible, but I am also divine. And I can deal with this, and I can,
Yeah.
people that fight, have illnesses, and it's the same thing. We all have challenges in life, and you don't really know your strength or how much courage you have unless you face a challenge like that.
Yes. And at the end of the day, if you think about what is the most powerful force in the universe, it is love. It's what gives us the courage to live for each other, and to save each other, and to do incredible things for each other. It's the most powerful thing. Other forces are simply there to support that, to kind of express that.
Yeah. So I hope that answered your question. I really, when I was a hypnotherapist, I got a lot of people with traumas and terrible, child abuse and all these things. And what I really discovered was that it's not the story of what happened to them. Like initially I was trained in regression work, where we review the story and they tell the story. But what was really the only thing that was holding them in place was the feeling, the emotion that was kind of the imprint of the emotion that was stored, the fear or the protective mechanism they developed, their ego developed to help them survive. And so we needed to just kind of have them face that feeling and then free themselves. And that's really, it's getting out of the story of what happened, and knowing that whatever happened to you, your ego was resilient and protective enough to help you survive. And that's a beautiful thing. Your ego is not bad. But it's just kind of survival mechanism. It has like one track mind. It's just survival, survival, survival. So we need both. We don't, you were saying like, why do we get set up this way? Because we needed the ego to survive. So part of the package was it's going to be scared. It's going to be afraid. It's going to have fear and sadness and heartbreak, because that's what it's part of. That part is the pleasure pain duality. But we can have both, and we can learn to live a powerful life through that. So wow, great questions, very deep. We didn't expect to go so deep today, but Allie was saying, can you talk about how this work is different than therapy? I'll let you handle that, doctor. How is our coaching different than therapy? That's a great question, Allie.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very simplistic answer, but in essence, if you think about the goals of therapy, it's really to bring people up from a deficiency of some sort to where they can function at the normal. And there's no real clear definition of what normal is, but it's essentially, in functional terms, it means that you're able to work and do your relationships your life
Mm.
without much struggle,
Mm.
without much impairment. So the goal of therapy is that, to
Just to get you to
bring you
normal.
back to functionality.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching, really, the goal is to, and we are assuming already that there's really nothing wrong with you. Whatever happened to you,
Even if you've had
it's part of
traumas,
life.
yeah,
Yeah, it's life. That the aim, the goal is to take you to that transcendent level of experiencing your full potential.
mm-hmm.
Right? Not only economic potential, emotional potential, psychological potential,
Spiritual.
spiritual potential. Yes, and that's really the ultimate
So
goal.
one's potential, and one is just to get you to functioning. So if you're functioning and you have a job, and you're not depressed, you don't need medication, and you're really just trying to, go further in life, that's coaching. But if you really need medication, or if you're diagnosed with some kind of disorder, you're not really functioning, you can't get out of bed, those kind of things, you would need a therapist. And that's the difference. One other question about sexual energy, talk about, and I know we're going over, so I don't know. We could start a whole thing. Maybe we'll do another class on it, but do you want to
Yeah, that
mention?
would be good to do a class on that one.
Yeah.
But in essence, it's the same energy. Really, if we look at where does spiritual energy come from, it is our sexual energy, or what we call sexual energy, transformed through our own enlightenment, through our own imagination, like the third eye, the higher concept of ourself. That energy is transformed then into that divine energy that we experience when we're meditating, or when
So it's
we're
that
making
raw
love.
human energy transformed into a spiritual energy.
Yes, because sexual energy, it has the power to create life. I mean,
And it shut off the mind.
Yeah.
When you have an orgasm, your everything clears, and it's just this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Have you ever had one, Rob?
It's always been part of the spiritual tradition in
Yeah.
some form or another.
Yeah.
But sometimes when religion becomes dogma, then it's
Taboo.
repressed and sublimated and all that. But you see, the serpent was always in the middle of the garden, essentially, and the serpent is that sexual energy.
Many people find a compatible partner with whom they are genuinely happy early on without doing spiritual work. Do they just have good karma? Well, they're compatible, but maybe they're matching up on this persona. So they're not individuated, and maybe that's fine. Not everyone becomes individuated. It's the potential for every human being. But some people just aren't individuated. They're just kind of projecting on each other. They kind of have this, maybe have a healthy projection, and it's happy and it's fine. But I believe that they're missing out because they don't get to ask the questions. It's like almost like a comfort that is misleading in a way. I've had a really good friend of mine. She had like that perfect life. She had the husband and the kids, and she really didn't do any inner searching until she got cancer. And then all of a sudden, she had this wake up call. So a lot of people just kind of live, and they feel like the material world is enough, and maybe they have a concept of God and divine. And for a lot of people, that's all they want out of this life. But I feel like true spiritual seekers, it's almost like a gift that we don't get everything we want, because it gives us an opportunity to really dig deep and ask the deeper questions of life. So I wouldn't say they're luckier or they have better karma. I would say they just, that it just kind of works for them. And
plus, it's a function of your own perception.
Yeah,
That you're
seeing
perceiving this happy couple, but you're just seeing a snapshot of their life, and you're interpreting their whole life based on that snapshot.
You can't listen to their thoughts, and maybe they're not doing the work they love. Maybe they're not satisfied in their career.
That's right. And throughout their life, also the life range, everyone has to answer these these very difficult questions.
Mm.
It may appear that some people have it easier,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody has it easy.
Mm.
That's why we respect other people, regardless of where they are in their life, because they're going through the same struggles that we're
They're not the people that
undergoing.
the people, what they post on Facebook isn't who they really are. So a lot of people get depressed when they look on Facebook or, Instagram, and they feel they're comparing their life to other people. They're comparing their insides to someone's outside. And so we have to remember that as well. And they could be generally happy. I mean, my parents were blissfully happy, and it wasn't wrong. They just, they conformed to, their traditional religion, and, they had a happy life. I'm glad I was able to wake up, and I feel like I have a rich life, and it's not better or worse, but it's just a different experience. And so I think we all choose the experience we want. And then if there's a yearning inside of us, a hunger for spiritual work, I think some of us are born with that. I think in essence, like there's certain one of us, I mean, I think we all have it, but some people have it in a stronger way. Don't you think?
Yeah, it's one of those mysteries.
It's like the little magic, because I see my siblings and we're not like the same. And why do I have that? Why did I always have, since I was a little kid, that kind of wanting to know more, that kind of mystery of life, kind of questioning, versus someone else? My other siblings were like just working to get a job and survive and get married. Don't you feel that way too?
Yeah. It chooses us in a way.
Yeah, yeah. So you're very special. So if you're suffering, you're special. I don't know. It's not that. It's that you're aware that you're suffering. Some people aren't even aware that they're in pain, because they're kind of looking for external support. This is why I think this kind of work is so important right now, because a lot of people are, the things that they found comfort in have been taken away temporarily, like going to restaurants and going out in the world, and going to work, and economy and everything, and relationships. How do I date now? And it really makes us turn inward and ask those important questions. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to grow. I hunger for more. Yes. Yes. It's been truly wonderful meeting you both, and this work I wouldn't otherwise have. Oh, thank you. Definitely. Okay. Well, we're going to head out. What a great call. We actually didn't expect it to be this long, but we just kind of went on a roll. What a rich topic. So we hope to see you on Monday for our next module 3. And if you're watching the replay, post your questions below. We'll even start a new feed. The mentors are going to be in the group all weekend and answering your questions as well. So we hope you continue participating, and we love you, and you deserve great love. And just remember, be courageous. There's nothing bad can happen. It's like you just be willing to just put yourself out there.
The poet Borges said, one thing we'll never regret in life is being courageous.
Okay. I like it. I like it. You're welcome, everyone. Turn inward. We'll see you on the flip side. Take care.